She shifted in seat 12F, trying to quiet the restlessness in her chest. The cabin smelled faintly of recycled air, coffee, and the lingering trace of jet fuel from the runway. Outside, the late afternoon light poured gold across the tarmac. Her daughter pressed her forehead against the oval window, wide-eyed, absorbing every glint of movement on the flight line. "Mom, look," the girl whispered, her breath fogging the glass. "Those aren't normal planes, are they?" Two sharp silhouettes gleamed in the distance, gray wings shaped for speed, parked like predators waiting for the sky. The mother leaned closer, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun at the base of her neck. She didn't need to squint. She knew them instantly, could almost hear the low growl of their engines before they ever moved. "F-22 Raptors," she murmured, the words soft but edged with memory. The girl blinked, her eyes shining. "Are those the ones you flew?" The woman hesitated, lips pressing into a line. She had practiced this moment, what to say, how much to reveal, but the question still landed like a weight she wasn't ready to carry. Too many layers of truth wrapped around those words. A man across the aisle shifted, glancing over. His jacket was casual, but the way he sat upright, alert without trying, gave him away. Military or former. She could always tell. He caught her eyes, almost as if her quiet answer had reached him too. But it was the woman in the navy blazer, seated diagonally, who leaned forward first. Hair tied back, laptop closed now after hours of steady typing. "Excuse me," she said politely, voice warm but curious. "I couldn't help overhearing. You recognize Raptors?" The mother offered the smallest smile, one trained for strangers. "You could say that." The journalist's eyes sharpened. "Aviation Weekly," she introduced herself, slipping a card across the aisle with practiced grace. "I've been researching modern air combat pilots, especially female pilots. Would you mind if I asked, what's your connection?" The girl turned in her seat before her mother could stop her, shoulders squared with pride too big for an 8-year-old frame. "My mom used to fly them. She was really good, too." Heat flushed her cheeks. "Anna," she whispered gently, a hand on her daughter's shoulder, "remember what I said about personal things on planes." "She's not bothering me at all," the journalist said quickly, leaning closer, voice tinged with genuine excitement. "You were an F-22 pilot." There it was. The question she had avoided in so many places, school functions, job interviews, the polite curiosity of neighbors. She never liked how people's eyes changed after. Respect, disbelief, sometimes doubt. They didn't see her anymore, only the uniform she wasn't wearing. "Yes," she admitted quietly, "for 8 years." The journalist sat back, almost reverent. "That makes you one of fewer than 30 women who ever flown them. That's extraordinary." Extraordinary. The word stung. It always did. Because extraordinary didn't hold you when the cockpit went silent and you wondered if you'd ever see your child again. Extraordinary didn't sit beside a hospital bed when your husband's heart failed 2 years too early. Extraordinary didn't cook dinner alone, fold laundry at midnight, or answer a daughter's question about why her father wasn't coming home. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and air traffic control has asked us to hold briefly. Military activity in the area." Heads turned toward the windows, and then gasps. 2 Raptors knifed across the sky, 1,000 feet above them, wings slicing through the air with a grace that was equal parts power and restraint. Their formation was perfect, like dancers bound by an invisible thread. The sound didn't reach the cabin, but in her bones she could still hear it, the thunder she had once commanded. Her daughter pressed against the glass again. "They look just like yours," she said, breathless. The man behind them leaned forward, voice carrying that same unmistakable cadence. "Did she say you flew those?" "Yes, sir," the little girl answered without hesitation, glowing with pride. "She was the best." The mother exhaled sharply, embarrassment creeping in. "Anna." But the journalist was already watching her with sharpened interest. "If you don't mind me asking," she said softly, "what was your call sign?" A silence settled. Even the engine seemed to hum lower. Her call sign, the one word she had carried through years of sorties, missions, training grounds scattered across desert and ocean skis. It wasn't something she gave lightly. It wasn't a nickname. It was a story, one born from mistakes, grit, survival. Her daughter's eyes were locked on her, waiting, hopping. "Specter," she said finally, almost a whisper. The reaction was immediate. A man 3 rose up, snapped his head around, his magazine forgotten. He rose from his seat, urgency in his step, and approached. Civilian clothes, but the bearing of someone who had worn a helmet and strapped into tight quarters. "Specter," his voice carried disbelief, almost awe. "You flew with that call sign." She tensed, old instincts assess, calculate, deny if possible. But the man extended his hand, firm and certain. "Major Tom Bradley, F-16s, Shaw Air Force Base. I've heard the stories, red flag exercises, Syria, the missions nobody thought possible. You're a legend." Her daughter's mouth dropped open. The journalist's pen was already moving. Passengers craned, whispering, curious, and she wanted to vanish into the seat. Legend. The word tasted foreign, wrong, like an ill-fitting uniform she hadn't worn in years. She wasn't a legend. She was a widow, a mother, a woman who had left the sky because someone small needed her more than the Air Force ever could. "Please," she said, voice steady but strained. "I was just doing my job." Bradley's eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. "With respect, ma'am, what you did wasn't just a job." The journalist leaned in. "Red flags," she pressed. "What happened there?" The major hesitated, looking at her for permission. She gave a slight shake of her head. "Not here, not with strangers, not in front of Anna." "Ma'am," Bradley said carefully, "she holds the record. Most simulated kills in a single exercise. 17 in 5 days. Nobody has come close." Gasps, murmurs. The elderly woman across the aisle placed her hand over her heart. "You mean to tell me this young lady is some kind of hero?" Her chest tightened. She hated that word more than legend, because heroes don't come home to empty houses. Heroes don't bury their partners. Heroes don't wake up at 3 a.m. wondering if they chose the right life or left too much of themselves behind. "No, ma'am," she said softly. "I'm just a mother trying to raise her daughter. The real heroes are the ones who didn't come back." The cabin stilled. Even the children seemed to quiet, the hum of the engines the only sound. Her daughter slipped her hand into hers, squeezing tight. "But I'm glad you came home," Anna whispered. "I missed you." The words hit harder than any mission debrief. A lump rose in her throat, memories of long deployments and lonely nights pressing in. She squeezed back, holding on to the only reason she had walked away from the sky. Bradley lowered himself into an empty seat nearby, studying her with respect that felt heavier than judgment. "Ma'am, if I may, why'd you leave? Pilots like you don't just step away." She glanced down at Anna, who was tracing her finger along the armrest, pretending not to listen but hanging on every word. "Because she needed me more than the cockpit did," she answered simply. "She already lost one parent. I wasn't going to let her lose another." The major nodded slowly. "I understand." The journalist closed her laptop, forgotten. Her eyes weren't that of a reporter anymore, but of a woman trying to understand sacrifice at a deeper level. "That must have been the hardest choice," she said softly. "The hardest of my life," Specter admitted. "Flying wasn't just what I did. It was who I was, but Anna comes first, always." The plane shuddered gently as it taxied. Over the intercom, the captain's voice returned. "Ladies and we've been cleared for takeoff." Bradley rose, straightened. "It's been an honor, ma'am. If you ever want to step back in, even as an instructor, there are hundreds who would learn from you." She offered a polite nod. "Thank you, but my flying days are behind me." When he returned to his seat, the journalist leaned one last time across the aisle. "Would you ever consider telling your story? Not classified details, just your truth. service, sacrifice, what it means to be called a hero and why you don't see yourself as one. People need voices like yours. Specter considered the question as the plane lifted, the earth shrinking beneath them. Through the small oval window, she caught a glimpse of the Raptors, still cutting across the sky, training, perfecting, moving as if the world depended on it. Maybe someday, she said finally, eyes fixed on the horizon. But for now, my mission's sitting right here beside me. Anna beamed, holding her hand. When I grow up, she whispered, I want to be just like you. Specter felt her chest ache, pride and sorrow intertwined, as the clouds swallowed them in silence. Then be kind, she said softly, be honest, and always put family first. The rest will take care of itself. The girl smiled, not fully understanding yet, but trusting every word. And in that quiet climb toward cruising altitude, the woman once called Specter knew this truth. Sometimes the greatest acts of heroism don't echo in the sky at all. They unfold in the stillness, in choices no one sees, in sacrifices no one claps for, in the dignity of love that simply endures. Why did they still remember her? Why did a single word, a call sign spoken too softly in a crowded cabin, ripple through strangers like a signal flare in the dark? She tried to steady her breathing, listening to the hum of the engines as the aircraft climbed into the layered blues above the city. Anna was chattering about the clouds, her small hand tracing shapes no one else could see, but her own pulse kept pulling her backward, back into a cockpit where there had been no room for mistakes. Specter. She hated the name the first time they gave it to her. A joke at first, the kind pilots used to break rookies in. She'd been too quiet in the squadron, too calm in debriefs, too willing to disappear into her notes. They called her a ghost. Then she flew, and the name stuck for reasons that were no longer funny. She closed her eyes and the memory returned, sharp as if etched into her skin. It was a night over the desert, training exercise, or so it was supposed to be, but the skis had a way of changing their mind. Radar lit up, two blips that didn't belong. Foreign fighters testing boundaries, pressing too close to U.S. aircraft running reconnaissance. She remembered the call in her headset, the sudden shift in tone, no longer simulated, real. She'd been alone in that quadrant. Heart hammering, oxygen mask pressing against her face, she heard her flight lead's voice crackle, telling her to hold, to wait. But she didn't wait. She moved like instinct, like something older than thought. She disappeared into the night sky, slipping between shadows, appearing where no one expected. And when the encounter was over, when the foreign jets pulled back and their own assets were safe, one phrase followed her down the ladder. She came out of nowhere, like a specter. The name stopped being a joke. It became a legend. And legends were the last thing she ever wanted. Mom, Anna's voice tugged her back. Her daughter's eyes were wide, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Why does everyone look at you like that? Like you're important? Her throat tightened. How do you explain to an 8-year-old the way war clings to you, even when you leave it behind? How do you tell her that being important once nearly cost her everything? Because, she said carefully, sometimes people remember things differently than they really happened. What matters is what you remember about me. Anna frowned, thinking hard. Then she smiled. I remember you always come back for me. The words landed with a force no mission ever had. The journalist was still watching, notebook forgotten, her expression no longer hungry for a story but reverent, almost apologetic. She whispered, You really were Specter, weren't you? The woman didn't answer. She just turned her gaze back to the sky. Hours later, when the cabin lights dimmed and passengers drifted into uneasy sleep, she couldn't. Sleep was something that often betrayed her. Closing her eyes meant seeing too much. The nightmares never came in full, just flashes. A radar screen glowing in the dark, a locked tone screaming in her ears, a flare burst slicing the night, and always, always the silence that followed, the kind that didn't feel like peace but like absence. She glanced at Anna, curled beneath the thin airline blanket, lips parted in a soft dream. For a moment she heard daughter's unbroken sleep, the innocence untouched by ghosts. Her mind wandered again, pulled backward by a memory she never told anyone. The mission over Syria, the one Major Bradley had almost mentioned before she shut him down. It had been chaos in the sky that night, rules of engagement blurred, threats rising and fatting like waves. She remembered the voice of another pilot, young, unsteady, calling out a warning too late. She remembered moving faster than thought, cutting across a kill box, pulling a maneuver that her instructors would have called reckless. She saved the recon plane. She knew that much. But she also remembered the silence afterward. The pilot whose voice had cried out never spoke again. And that was the truth of her call sign, not the record at red flag, not the myth of a ghost in the sky. It was the silence that followed her home. She rubbed her temples, grounding herself in the hum of the engines, in the weight of her daughter's small hand twitching in sleep. She had walked away from that life. She had chosen family. She had sworn never to go back. So why did it still cling to her? The journalist broke the silence in a low whisper. I know you don't want to talk about it, but I want you to know, I think it matters that you were there. That people know women carried that weight too, not just men. You broke through walls most of us can't even see. The mother's lips curved into something almost like a smile. Walls don't matter when you're falling from the sky. Gravity doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. Neither does a missile lock. The journalist nodded slowly, chastened by the truth of it. She let her gaze drift back to the window. The sky outside was calm now, stars faint against the veil of night. But she knew calm skies never told the whole story. A memory tugged again, this one softer. A different night, stateside, returning home after months away. She remembered stepping off the transport plane, her uniform stiff with desert dust, her hair matted beneath her cap. She remembered Anna, younger then, only 6, running into her arms. And she remembered the way her husband had looked at her, relief and love etched across his tired face. It had been the last time he welcomed her home. The heart attack came suddenly, stealing him away while she was in the air, unreachable. The call had reached her mid-flight, and by the time she landed, it was too late. She had missed the last moments. She had missed goodbye. That was the real reason she left. Not the record, not the recognition, not even the missions. It was the hollow space of loss, the realization that no medal, no commendation, no legend could fill the silence of an empty chair at home. Anna stirred, turning onto her side, her small hand seeking hers even in sleep. She gave it willingly, holding tight, grounding herself in the warmth of the living, not the ghosts of the past. The intercom crackled again, the captain's voice calm, routine. Ladies, and we'll be beginning our descent shortly. Please fasten your... The descent felt symbolic, like being pulled down from memories she'd floated too long inside. She straightened, breathing deep, reminding herself of who she was now. Not a Specter, not a pilot, just a mother. But even as the landing lights shimmered against the window, she knew the ghosts weren't done with her. Because ghosts never ask permission. They linger, waiting. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the ordinary rhythms of civilian life, the raptors still flew. Why was it always louder at night? The house was still. Anna had been asleep for hours, the rhythm of a child's breathing steady through the cracked door down the hall. Yet the silence pressed heavy, broken by the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, and the endless chatter inside her head. She sat at the kitchen table, a mug of coffee cooling beside unopened bills and half-finished homework sheets. The walls bore reminders of the life she tried to build, photographs of Anna at recitals, drawings taped unevenly by little hands, a faded picture of her husband smiling in a way that still made her chest ache. On paper, she was a mother, a widow, a former officer now working part-time as a consultant in a defense firm where no one looked at her the way pilots once did. They saw her as efficient, polite, professional, but they didn't know her. Not really. At night, the other life returned. The call sign whispered in her dreams, the cockpit wrapped around her again, the desert night rushing beneath her. She woke sometimes with her hands clenched into fists, knuckles pale, as though she had been gripping a stick at Mach speeds instead of clutching at. She had walked away. She reminded herself of that daily, but walking away didn't mean the ghost stopped following. Her phone buzzed against the table. The sound startled her enough that she spilled coffee across the bills. Swearing under her breath, she grabbed the phone before the screen dimmed. Unknown number. She considered letting it go to voicemail. Most of the calls that came at this hour weren't worth answering. But something in her gut twisted, the same instinct that once made her roll into a splittess before the radar even screamed. She answered. Specter. The voice was low, roughened by years of use. Male, American, and he used the name like it wasn't just a word but a lifeline. Her pulse spiked. Who is this? Silence stretched, heavy and deliberate. Then, someone who remembers, someone who owes you their life. She stood, packing, adrenaline kicking in against her will. That's not an answer. If you know me, you know I don't like games. I also know you walked away. But the sky doesn't forget its ghosts, and neither do the people who lived because of you. She gripped the edge of the counter, nails biting into the wood. What do you want? The line clicked dead. She stared at the screen, the empty number mocking her. Her chest tightened with the familiar ache, the one she thought she had left on the tarmac years ago. The past wasn't gone, it was circling back. The next morning, she forced routine back into place. Anna had school, and school mornings didn't care about cryptic phone calls or ghosts of war. Toast burned, homework went missing, shoes somehow vanished under couches. The chaos grounded her, even when her mind kept drifting back to the call. As they walked to the bus stop, Anna squeezed her hand. You look tired, Mom. Did you have another dream? She smiled tightly. Just couldn't sleep, that's all. Anna tilted her head. You know you don't have to be strong all the time. Dad used to tell me that. Her throat caught. He did, huh? Yeah, he said sometimes even pilots need to land. The bus arrived, saving her from answering. She kissed her daughter's forehead, watching her climb the steps, waving until the bus vanished down the street. Back home, the stillness returned, and so did the unease. She pulled an old box from the top of her closet. Dust clung to its edges. Inside lay fragments of the life she'd buried, patches from squadrons that no longer existed, photographs of flight lines at dawn, a helmet scratched and from training runs that had left her breathless. And tucked beneath it all, a notebook, her log of missions, debrief notes, half-legible reflections scrawled after nights she couldn't shake. She hadn't opened it in years, but today the weight of it demanded to be felt. Her fingers traced the cover. The last entry blurred through her vision before she blinked hard, a date she knew by heart, the mission over Syria, the one no one would ever talk about openly, the one that earned her the call sign not as a name but as a warning. Her phone buzzed again, same unknown number. She answered on the first ring. You kept the book, the voice again, calm, certain. Her blood ran cold. Who are you? Doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that the past isn't done with you, Specter. You think you left, but some of us still need you. Her heart hammered. She turned, scanning the windows, half expecting someone to be outside. If this is some sick joke. It's not a joke, it's a call. One you can ignore if you want, but deep down you know you won't. Click. Dead air again. She lowered the phone, her reflection staring back at her in the black screen. Haunted eyes. A face lined by years of choices. That evening at work, she barely registered the chatter of colleagues around her. The office buzzed with keyboards and fluorescent light, but her mind was elsewhere. Her manager droned on about deadlines, but all she could hear was the voice from the phone. Specter. The call sign she thought she had buried with her uniform. The the call sign now clawing its way back into her life. She drove home in silence, headlights cutting across the empty roads. The sun sank behind the horizon, the sky bleeding orange into violet. It reminded her of flight lines again, that in-between time when day faded but the night hadn't fully claimed the sky. Anna met her at the door, arms open, chattering about a school project. She smiled, forced herself into the rhythm of dinner, homework, bedtime. But as soon as Anna's breathing steadied in sleep, she returned to the box, the notebook, the memories she had tried to bury. She sat at the table, the logbook open, fingers tracing the names written in margins, names of wingmen, missions. Some of them were gone now. Some had never come back. She wondered who had called, why now, what it meant. And why, despite everything, a part of her wanted to answer. Why was the voice always calm, as if he knew she would eventually listen? The fourth call came just after dusk, when the neighborhood quieted and porch lights flickered to life. Anna was in the living room, cross-legged on the rug, building a fortress from blocks and plastic figures. The mother stood at the sink, rinsing plates, trying to pretend her hands weren't trembling from the memory of the earlier calls. Her phone buzzed on the counter, unknown number, again. She considered ignoring it, but ignoring hadn't stopped the others. She answered. "Specter." The voice came through, low, steady, almost familiar. "You're still there, good." Her jaw clenched. "I told you, don't call this number again." "I can't promise that," he replied. "Not until you hear me out." Her eyes flicked to the living room where Anna was humming to herself, arranging toy soldiers in neat rows. "I have a daughter. I left that life behind. Whatever you think I can do, you're wrong." A pause, then, "It's not about what you can do, it's about who you are, and who you are doesn't walk away when people are in danger." Her chest tightened. "What danger?" Static filled the line for a moment, like hesitation. Then he said quietly, "You'll know soon enough." Click. The line went dead. She stood frozen, water still running into the sink, the weight of his words pressing like altitude against her chest. That night sleep refused her. Every sound outside seemed louder. A car passing, the creak of tree branches against the roof, the tick of the baseboard heater. Her body stayed tense, waiting for a threat she couldn't see. Sometime past midnight, she gave up on rest. She pulled the notebook back from the box in her closet, flipping pages until her eyes landed on the entry she always avoided. The mission over Syria, the silence that followed. She hadn't told anyone the full story, not her commanding officers, not the debrief team, not even her husband when he'd asked what haunted her at night. The truth had been locked inside, sealed with the call sign that clung to her like smoke. And now someone else knew, someone who wanted her to remember. The next day blurred by in fragments. Dropping Anna off at school, pretending she didn't notice the dark circles under her eyes when the teacher greeted her politely. Sitting in meetings at work, hearing words but absorbing none. Picking up groceries, making small talk with the cashier, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Normal life, but beneath the surface the tension coiled. It snapped that evening when she spotted the envelope. No return address, just her name written in block letters, resting on the welcome mat. She carried it inside, hands trembling, Anna skipping past her to put her backpack down. She waited until her daughter was upstairs before she slid it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 3 words. Red flag 2016. Her knees weakened. She sank into a chair, the paper trembling in her grip. That exercise was supposed to be sealed. Records classified, stories locked away. Only those who had been there knew what happened in those skis. And now someone had put it on her doorstep. The phone rang again. She answered before the first ring ended. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who remembers the night you saved a flight that should have been lost," the voice said calmly. "Someone who knows what it cost you, and someone who believes the past isn't finished with you yet." She gritted her teeth. "I told you I have a daughter. My life is here now." "You think you can separate the two?" he asked softly. "The past and the present, you can't. Sooner or later, one bleeds into the other." Her voice broke sharper than she intended. "If you know so much about me, then you know why I can't go back, why I won't." Silence stretched. Then he said, "You left the sky, but the sky hasn't left you." The line clicked dead. She slammed the phone down, heart pounding, throat tight. She wanted to scream, but Anna's footsteps padded down the stairs. Her daughter peeked into the kitchen, holding a book. "Can you read to me?" Her anger drained in an instant, replaced by something heavier, guilt. She nodded, swallowing hard. "Of course." They curled together on the couch, Anna's head resting against her shoulder, the storybook a shield against the storm in her chest. For a little while, the ghosts receded. But when Anna finally drifted to sleep against her, the woman sat there in the dark, staring at the envelope on the table. 3 words, a reminder that someone somewhere hadn't forgotten. She thought about Bradley, the F-16 pilot who had recognized her on the flight. The way he'd said "legend" like it meant something more than a call sign. The way Sarah, the journalist, had asked if she'd ever tell her story. Maybe the world hadn't forgotten. Maybe it never would. And maybe, she realized with a cold shiver, the calls weren't just warnings. Maybe they were invitations. How long could she keep pretending the past wasn't bleeding into her present? She told herself the envelope meant nothing, that the calls were some elaborate prank, a mistake, a coincidence. But deep down she knew better. The name written on her doorstep wasn't random. Red Flag 2016 wasn't something you stumbled onto in a news archive. Whoever was behind this knew her. And sooner or later, they would come closer. It happened on a Tuesday. She had taken Anna to the park after school, the air crisp with early spring, children's laughter cutting across the open space. Anna climbed the jungle gym with fearless determination, hair flying, shouting down at her to watch. She did, smiling faintly, trying to let the sound wash over her. That's when she saw him. Not a stranger, not exactly familiar either. Sitting on a bench beneath the shade of a tree, his posture too disciplined for casual. Ball cap pulled low, jacket zipped despite the mild weather. His eyes followed Anna for a moment before shifting to her. She froze. He rose, slow, deliberate, and walked toward her with the kind of gait that never fully shed its years in uniform. "Specter." The voice matched the phone calls, calm, roughened by age and use. Her pulse spiked. She stepped instinctively between him and the jungle gym, shielding Anna with her body even from a distance. "You've been calling me." "Yes," his tone was steady, "because I need you to listen." "I told you already." He cut her off, lowering his voice. "This isn't about you wanting to come back. This is about something bigger, something only you can help with." Her jaw tightened. "I'm not a pilot anymore. I don't wear the uniform. I have a daughter. My life is here." He nodded slowly as though he'd anticipated every word. "And that's exactly why I came myself. Because I know what it costs to choose family over the cockpit. I know you won't give up what you have. But this isn't about duty. It's about survival." Her stomach nodded. Survival of who? He hesitated, scanning the park as if measuring how much he could say in public. Then he leaned closer. "People from that exercise, Red Flag, they're disappearing." Her blood chilled. Disappearing how? Not transfers, not retirements, not accidents, gone off the map. No explanations. Her grip tightened on her coat sleeves, knuckles pale. "And you think I'm next?" His eyes didn't waver. "I think you're already on someone's list. The envelope, the calls, they weren't warnings, they were signals. Somebody wants to flush you out, and if they know about you, they know about her." Her heart slammed against her ribs. Instinctively, she glanced toward Anna, who was laughing on the swings now, oblivious to the storm unfolding just steps away. "If this is true," she whispered fiercely, You put her in danger by coming here." "I didn't put her in danger," he said firmly. "Whoever's behind this already did. I came to make sure you're ready when they move." She shook her head. "No, I left that life behind. I don't fly anymore. I don't fight anymore." He held her gaze, voice low but urgent. "You don't get to choose when ghosts come back, Specter. You only get to choose how you face them." For a moment, the noise of the park dimmed, the laughter and chatter fading into nothing but the pounding in her ears. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him to leave her alone, to disappear the way the others had. But the weight of his words pressed harder than denial. People from Red Flag were disappearing, and someone had left that envelope on her doorstep. It wasn't coincidence. "Why me?" she demanded finally. "Why not anyone else?" His expression shifted, something like sorrow flickering beneath the steel. "Because you were the one who saved us that night. You were the one who flew where no one else dared. Whoever's behind this, they haven't forgotten either." Her chest tightened. The ghosts of that mission clawed closer, the silence of the pilot who hadn't made it home echoing louder than the praise she'd once received. She turned away, watching Anna pump her legs higher on the swing, laughing freely, untouched by shadows. "I won't let them touch her." "Then listen to me," he urged softly. "Because whether you want to believe it or not, they're already closer than you think." Before she could respond, Anna leapt from the swing, running toward her, arms wide. The man straightened, stepping back, his presence shrinking into anonymity again. "Mom," Anna beamed, grabbing her hand. "Did you see? I went all the way up." She forced a smile, crouching to hug her tight, holding her longer than usual. "I saw, sweetheart. You were amazing." By the time she looked up, the man was gone. That night she double-checked every lock on the doors, pulled the curtains tight, and sat awake long after Anna had fallen asleep. The envelope lay on the counter where she'd left it, mocking her with its simplicity. 3 words. Red Flag 2016. Now she knew. It wasn't just a reminder. It was a warning. She pressed her palms into her face, fighting back the tide of memories threatening to break through. The weight of her choices pressed in. She wanted to believe she could keep the 2 lives separate, mother and pilot, widow and warrior. But maybe the man was right. Maybe there was no separation. The sky never really let go. And if it was coming for her, then it was already coming for Anna. She lifted her head, staring into the darkened living room, her reflection faint in the window. The call sign whispered in her ears again, not as pride but as prophecy. Specter, the ghost that never truly rests. Why did the ghosts always return when she tried hardest to forget them? She sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, the envelope open before her, the words etched into her mind. Red Flag 2016. 3 words that had followed her into every corner of her thoughts. She couldn't stop replaying the man's warning in the park. People were disappearing. People she once flew with, laughed with, trained with. People who had written their names into the same skis. She told herself it wasn't her problem, that she had chosen a new life, that she had sworn, quietly and fiercely, never to let Anna grow up motherless. And yet, she opened her laptop, the glow painting her tired face in the dim light. The internet knew nothing of disappearances. No headlines, no obituaries, no scandals. But she didn't expect to find it there. If what the man had said was true, it wouldn't be on public record. So she dug deeper. Old contacts, former colleagues, names she hadn't whispered in years. She typed one into a search bar, hesitated, deleted it, and typed another. Nothing. She sat back, frustrated. The quiet hum of the refrigerator seemed louder in the silence. She was about to shut the laptop when her phone buzzed. A message this time. Check your email. You'll find what you're looking for. Her pulse raced. She opened her inbox. One new message, no sender, no subject. Inside was a single attachment, a list. She clicked it open. Names scrolled down the screen. Call signs, dates, units, every one of them familiar. People she had flown beside, people she'd studied with people who had sweated through desert training under the same sun. And beside 5 of the names in red text, missing. Her breath caught. She stared at the list, scanning it again and again, hoping her eyes had betrayed her. But the names didn't change. One name stopped her cold. Viper. Her throat tightened. She hadn't thought of him in years. Viper, her wingman during Red Flag, the one who used to joke that her calm silence unnerved even the instructors. The one who had been there that night over Syria. Missing. She slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Whoever was behind this wasn't bluffing. The phone buzzed again, a second message. "You're next." Her hands trembled, phone slick with sweat. She forced herself to breathe. In, out. The words weren't just a threat. They were a certainty. Someone had gone to great lengths to remind her of who she was, to draw her back into a game she no longer wanted to play. And now they were closing in. She rose quickly, checking locks, pulling curtains. The house felt too small, too exposed. She climbed the stairs to Anna's room, heart pounding until she saw her daughter asleep, safe, clutching a stuffed rabbit. She stood in the doorway, torn between relief and dread. How could she protect her when the danger wasn't something she could see? The next day, exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. She dropped Anna at school, kissed her goodbye, and sat in the car longer than usual, staring at the playground fence as though it might crumble. At work, she couldn't focus. She kept refreshing her email, half hopping and half dreading another message. Her manager noticed her distraction, asked if everything was all right. She forced a smile. Just didn't sleep well. The lie tasted bitter. By evening, she couldn't stand it anymore. She needed answers, real ones. She drove across town, past streets she hadn't traveled in years, until she reached a small bar tucked between warehouses. The kind of place where veterans gathered, invisible to most of the city. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and stories. Old uniforms hung in frames, patches worn thin with history. She spotted him near the back, a face she recognized from briefings, though time had lined it deeper. He looked up, surprise flashing when he saw her. "Specter," he said, using the name like no years had passed. She slid into the booth. "Tell me about Viper." His jaw tightened. He didn't ask how she knew. "Gone," he said finally. "No trace. One day he's here, next day nothing. Family says they never heard a word, no note, no transfer papers, nothing." Her chest ached. "And the others?" He nodded grimly. "Same pattern, different bases, different states, all gone, and nobody's talking." "Why?" Her voice cracked sharper than she meant. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because they were there. Red Flag, 2016. Whatever happened that year, someone doesn't want it remembered." She froze. The words hit like a strike to the gut. Red Flag. The mission that had defined her call sign, the mission that had left her carrying ghosts ever since. And now those ghosts were being erased. She gripped the edge of the table. "Why come for me now?" He studied her, eyes heavy with something between pity and respect. "Because you were the only one who came back louder than the silence. You were the one they couldn't erase, but they'll try." The bar noise faded, the clatter of glasses and low laughter dissolving under the weight of his words. She rose abruptly, the room spinning. "I can't do this." He didn't stop her. "You already are." Outside, the night air was sharp, cutting through her thoughts. She walked quickly to her car, keys clenched like a weapon. Every shadow felt closer, every passing car too slow. When she finally pulled into her driveway, she sat for a moment, staring at the darkened windows of her home. Anna was inside, safe for now. But for how long? She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, breath shuddering. The line she had drawn years ago, between the pilot she once was and the mother she had become, blurred until she couldn't see it anymore. And for the first time in years, she admitted the truth. She wasn't done with the sky. The sky wasn't done with her. Why did fear always sharpen the world, making every sound, every shadow feel like a warning? She woke before dawn, pulse hammering, the nightmare dissolving too quickly to remember. For a moment she lay still, listening. The house was quiet but not calm. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath. She rose quietly, checking the locks again, moving like muscle memory through the hall. Anna was asleep, hair sprawled across the pillow, her small hand clutched tight around the rabbit she never let go of. Relief loosened something in her chest, but only a little. The list from the email still burned in her mind. Names marked missing. Viper. Others. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years but had trusted with her life. And if the man at the bar was right, someone was erasing them one by one. She couldn't let Anna become collateral. At the kitchen table, she scribbled a list on the back of an old envelope. Not names, not missions, necessities. Cash, spare keys, emergency contacts, routes out of town, things a mother needed when the world turned dangerous. Halfway through, she stopped, staring at the paper. She'd done this before, years ago before a deployment, except then the list had been for her husband, instructions for what to do if she didn't make it back. Now the roles had shifted, and the weight of it nearly broke her. Her phone buzzed, another message. Stop running, start remembering. Her grip tightened until the phone creaked. She typed back before she could stop herself. Who are you? What do you want? 3 dots pulsed, then disappeared, no reply. She slammed the phone down, chest burning. That afternoon at Anna's school, she caught herself scanning the parking lot, studying unfamiliar cars, watching every face too closely. Other parents waved politely. She forced a smile, but inside, alarms kept blaring. Anna skipped beside her, holding her hand. Can we get ice cream on the way home? She nodded automatically, but when they reached the shop, her eyes darted to the corners, the door, the windows. A man in a leather jacket held the door open for them, and she felt her pulse spike as though he were a threat. He smiled kindly. She barely nodded back. Anna noticed. Mom, why are you acting weird? She crouched, smoothing her daughter's hair. Just tired, sweetheart, that's all. It wasn't all. But how do you tell a child that her life might already be tangled in shadows she couldn't even see? That night when Anna slept, she opened the box from her closet again. This time she didn't just touch the helmet. She lifted it out, the weight solid in her hands. The visor was scratched, but when she looked into it, her reflection stared back like a stranger she had once known. She set it on the table next to the notebook. Then she began to read. Page after page of missions, details she had tried to bury, coordinates, call signs, maneuvers that had once felt like second nature. But between the numbers and jargon, her own handwriting betrayed her. Notes scribbled after hours in the air, when adrenaline still pulsed and clarity cut sharper. One line caught her, written in the margin of the red flag entry. Not a drill, not simulated, real contact. Her breath hitched. She remembered now, the radar lighting up, the foreign fighters pressing too close, the rules bending, then breaking. They had called it an exercise, but it hadn't been. And if the others were disappearing, maybe it was because someone wanted that truth buried. Her hands shook as she closed the book. A knock startled her, sharp, deliberate, echoing through the quiet house. She froze. No one knocked at this hour. She reached for her phone, but the screen lit before she could dial. A message. Answer the door. Her chest seized. She crept toward the entryway, careful not to make the floorboards creak. Through the peephole, the porch light glared against a shadowed figure. A man, cap pulled low. The same man from the park. She opened the door only partway, voice low and hard. You're going to get us killed showing up here. He raised his hands in a gesture of calm. If I wanted you dead, Specter, I wouldn't be knocking. Say what you came to say, then leave. He studied her, eyes searching. They'll come whether you're ready or not. You've been marked since the day you left, but you have a choice. Run or fight. Her throat tightened. I have a daughter, I can't risk her. That's why you have to fight, he said quietly. Because if you don't, they'll take away everything you've tried to build. Her fists clenched at her sides. Why me? Why not someone else? Because you were the one that night, he said simply. You saw what it really was. You know it wasn't just training. If that truth comes out, it changes everything. And they'll do whatever it takes to silence it. She shook her head, anger sparking through her fear. I'm not your weapon anymore. His gaze didn't waver. No, you're something more dangerous, you're proof. For a long moment the night stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Then he stepped back. When they move, you'll know, and when you're ready, call me. He slid a card into the crack of the door. No name, just a number. Then he turned and walked into the dark. She stood there long after he was gone, heart pounding. Anna's soft breathing drifting down the hallway like a reminder of everything she had to lose. She closed the door, locked it, leaned her forehead against the wood. Her reflection in the window caught her again, tired, haunted but unbroken. Specter. Maybe the name had never been a curse. Maybe it was a warning. And maybe it was time. She decided what kind of ghost she would be. Why was it always at night that the storm came closest? The air felt too still, the house too quiet. She sat in the living room, Anna asleep upstairs, the helmet and notebook still resting on the table. The card the man had left was tucked into her palm. One number, no name. She hadn't called, not yet, because calling meant choosing, and she wasn't ready. Her phone buzzed. A message, no sender. It's time. Her chest tightened. She stood, checking the locks again, but the knock came before she reached the door. Hard, heavy, not like the man from the park. This was different. She froze. The knock came again, louder. She grabbed the phone, her thumb hovering over the number on the card. She hesitated, then pressed it. One ring, two. He answered, Specter. They're here, she whispered. Keep calm, don't open the door, stay with your daughter, I'm on my way. The line went dead. Her heart thundered as she crept upstairs, every step measured, careful not to wake Anna yet. She slipped into her daughter's room, watching her small body rise and fall with sleep. For a moment she thought about waking her, running, vanishing into the night. But where would they go? How far could you run from ghosts that didn't care about distance? The knock turned into pounding, then silence. She held her breath. A shadow crossed the window, another. They weren't knocking anymore, they were circling. Her chest burned. She crouched beside Anna's bed, brushing hair from her forehead. Sweetheart, she whispered, wake up. Anna stirred, blinking. Mom, what's wrong? She forced her voice steady. We need to leave, okay? Right now. But I need you to be brave and very quiet. Anna sat up, clutching her rabbit. Is it bad guys? Her throat tightened, something like that. The sound of glass shattering downstairs made Anna flinch. No more time. She grabbed her daughter, pulling her close, moving swiftly down the hall toward the back door. But when she reached the kitchen, a figure was already stepping through the broken glass. Masked, silent. Her instincts returned in a rush. Instincts, combat instincts. She shifted Anna behind her, body tensed. The intruder raised a hand, not a gun, but something else. A signal, and suddenly another shadow filled the doorway. Before she could react, headlights cut across the house. Tires screeched outside. A door slammed. The man from the park burst in, weapon drawn, voice sharp. Move. The intruders scattered, retreating like they'd only come to test the defenses. Within seconds, the night swallowed them again. He slammed the door shut, glass crunching under his boots. You see now. She clutched Anna, heart racing. What do they want? The truth you carry, he said grimly. Red flag wasn't just training. It was contact. Real combat under the guise of simulation. You proved it that night when you saved the recon plane. And someone somewhere has been erasing every pilot who knows, except you. Her knees weakened. She guided Anna back to the couch, tucking her close, whispering reassurances even as her own chest trembled. "Why not just kill me?" she asked, voice breaking. "They don't want to make a martyr," he said. "They want silence, clean, erased. That's what happened to Viper, to the others, but you're harder to erase. You walked away. You built a life. You became more than the cockpit, and that makes you dangerous." She looked down at Anna, who was clinging to her, eyes wide but trusting. "I don't care about being dangerous," she said softly. "I just want her safe." The man crouched, his eyes fierce but not unkind. "Then you need to decide. Do you keep running until they catch up? Or do you stand and fight, not for glory, not for the legend, but for her?" Silence filled the room, broken only by Anna's soft breaths and the hum of the fridge. The ghosts pressed close, whispering every failure, every loss, every silence she carried. She rose slowly, her body steadying with each breath. She picked up the helmet from the table, holding it one last time, the weight familiar, the reflection in the visor no longer a stranger. She set it down. "I'm not Specter anymore," she said quietly. "I'm her mother, that's my mission now." The man studied her, then nodded. "Then we protect that mission, together." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Whether they were for her, she didn't know. Maybe it didn't matter. She gathered Anna in her arms, carrying her upstairs, laying her gently back into bed. Her daughter's voice was soft, drifting toward sleep again. "Mom, are you scared?" Her chest tightened. "Sometimes," she admitted. Anna smiled faintly, eyes closing. "It's okay, you always come back." Tears stung her eyes. She kissed her daughter's forehead, lingering. When she stepped back into the hall, the man was waiting. "What now?" he asked. She looked at him, her voice quiet but firm. "Now I do what I should have done years ago. I don't run from the ghosts. I face them, but I don't face them alone." He nodded once. The night stretched long, but her fear had shifted. It wasn't gone, but it no longer owned her. She had been a pilot, a soldier, a widow, a ghost. But here, in this quiet house, she was something stronger. A mother who chose love over legend, family over fear. And sometimes that was the bravest fight of all. Because dignity doesn't always roar. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.